Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Business Case Realization, the Goal of Mature Project Management Practice. I'm Kevin Aguano. I'll be your presenter for today. The way we're going to be structuring today's webinar is be giving you a formal presentation during which you'll stay muted, and I will proceed through the presentation materials you should see on the screen in front of you. Save your questions, and at the end I will have time for question and answer. If you are worried you'll forget your questions, you can type them into the chat window or the questions window on your web interface, and we'll address them towards the end of the presentation. If you're watching this later on, for example, YouTube or one of the video recordings, then you will obviously not have a chance to ask questions live, but we will provide contact information at the end of the presentation where you could email questions later or make a phone call if you have additional information requirements. Okay, so let's begin. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Kevin Aguano. I've been a project manager for over 30 years. My background is involved in all kinds of project management, traditional project management, where we're doing software development, engineering, construction, mergers and acquisitions, organizational change, marketing campaign development. I've worked in nonprofit, I've worked for government and private sector. I've spent quite a long time in lots of different industries, managing large and small projects alike. I'm a professor of project management at the university level. I've written over 30 books on project management, and I'm heavily involved in the international project management community in a number of different associations. And I've received all kinds of certifications and awards and things like that. So use me as a resource, put me in your Rolodex, connect with me on LinkedIn, and we'll be able to stay in touch, and you can always reach out to me with any questions you may have. Okay, just from a show of hands on the live audience, just click your raised hand icon if you can hear me, if the audio is working, and if you can see the slides. So there's, on your web interface, there should be a little hand icon. If you can click that, we know you can hear me and you can see the slides. That's what I was, oh, there are some hands coming up. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, thank you. I was worried there that it wasn't working. That's awesome. Okay, so let me carry on then into the presentation. So today we're going to talk about business cases and business value and why do we do projects in the first place. I'm going to start by talking about how our project management standards, how we determine if we're doing project management right or not, how they've evolved over time to start taking a more serious look at project management standards, our project business case value and business value realization. We're going to talk about what is the whole point of projects and how you as project managers can use some of this knowledge to position yourself to be seen as a more advanced project management figure to help you get ahead of the curve, get ahead of the rest of the people towards seeing this evolution happening and being there ahead of the crowd. Okay, so let's talk about the recent evolution of PM standards. And I guess it all started back in 1996 when PMI produced the first version of what we call the PMBOK guide, the guide to the project management body of knowledge. Actually, there was a document produced earlier than this, and I believe it was 1987. I have a copy of it here somewhere, and it was called the Project Management Body of Knowledge, not the guide to the project management body of knowledge, but this was the Project Management Body of Knowledge. And it was produced by a dear friend who lived out in BC, Canada. He's now moved to Toronto and he's doing well. But he produced this earlier version, which was an attempt to codify everything a project management should know. His name was Max Weidman. You may be familiar with the name. And he was trying to list everything a project manager should know to be competent. But there was some, obviously he was praised for his work, but there was some criticism of this because some of it varies by industry, by size of project, etc. So the thinking in the community changed, that we can't have a definitive standard of what everybody should know, but we can have a guidelines, right, that people can consider to use in developing their project management skills, in developing methodologies. There should be some guidelines, even though we can't be completely prescriptive. And thus was the attempt to create this PMBOK guide. Now, the primary author of this document was a guy named Bill Duncan. And Duncan actually wrote all the words that came into this document. Every word in this document came out of his fingers onto his keyboard. He wrote the document. He wrote the PMBOK guide. There's a team of people who are behind him providing input and feedback, but he primarily came up with the concepts of the tools and techniques, the inputs and outputs, the 5 process groups, the 11 or 10 at that time, or 9, and it kept evolving, knowledge areas. So the concept of knowledge areas in the PMBOK guide all came from Duncan's thinking. And I know him very well. He's a friend of mine. And his initial thinking on this was a little bit biased. He'd worked as a government contractor, and he'd always been a vendor of projects to clients. So his view of project management was that a project starts when you get a signed contract, right? When the client signs the contract, that starts the project. And now your job is to deliver that contract, deliver what was promised in that contract according to the terms of the contract. So according to, time, budget, quality, scope, all the requirements of the contract, the conditions of the contract need to be respected in how you deliver those promises. So it had almost like a contract delivery view of project management. That was his thinking on this. However, project work actually starts sooner. If you think about it, somebody is setting expectations for what should go into that contract. Somebody is talking about this project, setting up visioning for this project. People are involved in setting expectations and defining the project much sooner, because the contract itself has a statement of what the scope is. How did we come up with that scope? That's really project work. Gathering requirements, doing some analysis, doing some modeling, visioning, prioritizing requirements, working with all the stakeholders to understand stakeholder needs. Those are all parts of project management as well. In fact, that early version of the PMBOK guide only actually mentioned stakeholders once or twice. It wasn't a major focus. But projects are all about delivering the business needs, and the business stakeholders are the ones that are driving the project. They're the ones asking for the project because they have things that they want to achieve. So there was that document did very well and was very influential in expanding PMI rapidly and the popularity of the PMP certification. So some time went by, and a few revisions of the PMBOK guide went by. But it wasn't until the 5th edition of the PMBOK guide in 2013 where we had a significant change. Now, this is almost 20 years later. After the first PMBOK guide, we have the first major change. Until then, every update of the PMBOK guide were minor edits, right? We're going to change some wording, improve a definition, tweak and expand a little bit, and it just refining what is there. But in 2013, the 5th edition, we had a significant shift, and they added another knowledge area. They finally added stakeholder management as a knowledge area. PMI realized that projects start way before the contract is signed. Somebody's got to meet with those stakeholders, understand their vision, gather requirements, come up with the scope of the project, maybe even come up with some rough budget expectations so they can get approvals, to have some money set aside for this project and actually have the project included in next year's budget, right? So the project actually starts sooner than signing a contract with a vendor or signing a charter to launch the project. It happens much sooner. Now, at the beginning, other people were addressing this gap, and we saw the rise of the BA profession, the business analyst profession, because that earlier version of the PMBOK guide, the 96th edition, didn't even talk that much about stakeholders and requirements. So it was dealt with through another profession that emerged called business analysis, right? So people said, if it's not project management, it must be something else. And we saw the evolution of the BA profession. But really, business analysis is part of projects, right? Like that work is some of the work that goes into a project. So this revised edition in 2013 actually had a whole section on stakeholder management, which is a new knowledge area, much more information about gathering requirements and prioritizing requirements and working with stakeholders. And in fact, the following year, early in the following year, 2014, PMI launched their own business analyst certification called the PMI PBA, or Project Business Analyst or Professional Business Analyst. So PMI launched their own BA certification in 2014. So that was a major shift. In fact, people thought, what's PMI doing? Getting into other professions. They're trying to compete with these other associations. But that's not what was happening. PMI was just expanding the definition of a project to include the stuff that people already thought was probably project management or project related work, just happening sooner in the life cycle. And then more recently, 7 years after that, in 2021, the most recent version, the current version of the PMBOK guide was released, which is the 7th edition of the PMBOK guide. PMI made another revolutionary change. What they did was they added a whole new concept about what happens at the end of a project. Because the old view of a project is when you've delivered the scope on time, on budget, the project's done. But is it really? Business stakeholders are hiring you to build a deliverable. Maybe it's a new piece of equipment that needs to be, installed in a manufacturing plant. The project is to source, acquire, and install the equipment, right? Great, project's done on time, on budget, the equipment's installed. Is the project over? Are there maintenance agreements in place to support, to maintain the equipment? Are there supply arrangements in place to make sure all the supplies the equipment needs to run are in place? What about training the operators of the equipment? Has that been done? These are elements not related to the direct goal of the project, which was explicitly to acquire and install a piece of equipment, but they're needed for the business to actually get any benefit out of that equipment. The reason the business asked for that equipment was to achieve some business objectives. And to achieve those objectives, those benefits, we need some other stuff. We need what was called organizational change management. We need to be able to make sure that the organization is ready to take advantage of this new equipment to achieve its business objectives. Thus, we need to, get the support desk people trained up and the users of the system trained, and maybe even some of their managers to be aware of this new equipment and what's required. We're going to need, supply arrangements and maintenance procedures, manuals, and all kinds of stuff to make sure that this equipment is able to deliver how people expected it to, the value that's needed. So this new version of the PMBOK guide put a large focus on the role of organizational change management in helping a project achieve its business case benefits. Organizational change management was defined as a necessary PM skill. And in fact, on the side, this new version of the PMBOK guide it was the first time there was not just an edit of the original document, it was a ground up rewrite. For the very first time, they started from scratch and rewrote the PMBOK guide with a completely different perspective. They got rid of the knowledge areas. They got rid of the tools and tips and inputs and outputs and process groups. They changed the whole paradigm to focus on delivery principles and concepts that PMs need to know to be able to deliver in any environment. A very radical change. So while the PMBOK guide went through many revisions, 96, 2000, 04, 08, 2013, when we had the addition of stakeholders, 2017, 2021, when we got the addition of organizational change management, PMI is growing into this end-to-end view of projects, starting sooner in the process when we're conceiving of a project and gathering our initial requirements and doing some initial expectation setting and some strategic planning of a project, starting there and moving all the way to the end when we're delivering the actual benefits that the project intended in the first place and measuring those benefits and seeing how we did. It's a much longer life cycle view of a project. So while it took PMI 30 years to get here, 25 years to get here, other project management associations were already there. There's the JPMF, the Japanese Project Management Forum, and others. One of the big ones is called IPMA, the International Project Management Association. And roughly at the same time that PMI was defining their first PMBOK guide, IPMA was working on their third version of their equivalent document. They call it the ICB, the International Competence Baseline. What they're trying to define is all of the skills and tools and techniques and things that project managers need to consider to include on their projects, the competencies that they need to be successful in a wide range of project situations. Not every project will need every competence element, but across your career, you're probably going to exercise all of these. So they define that initially before this, but by 1999, they've got a very mature document where PMI had their 10 knowledge areas. The ICB had 46 competence elements across 3 areas. They had the technical skills that a PM needs to know, things like scheduling and risk management. They had the soft skills that a person needs to demonstrate, like leadership, creative problem solving, emotional self-control, all those soft skills that people need. And they also had, on top of persuasion, negotiation skills, etc. And then they also had the business knowledge that a person might need, like the ability to maybe understand financial statements or the ability to understand a little bit about contract law, for example. Some of these general business skills a good PM needs to know. So they need all of those skill sets to be successful. We identified that in the first version of the PMBOK guide from PMI in 96. It said there are those 3 areas, but it says we're only going to focus on the PM technical skills in this document, and carries on in that regard. And it's always had that bias that it's focused on just the PM skills, but PMI recognized those broader skills are needed. So also around the moving up to the 2021 edition of the PMBOK guide, PMI was starting to expand, for example, their talent triangle to push into, you need people skills as well as these technical skills, and you need the business competence elements. Those were evolving in parallel with the evolution of the PMBOK guide. PMI was moving towards that sort of 3-front view of project management competences. Now, this International Competence Baseline, or ICB, the most recent version is version 4. I was part of the committee that approved that document to get it launched internationally. That came out was written in 2015. I think we approved it in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been 15 in Mexico. We got that approved to launch internationally. That document has always had this end-to-end view of projects, starting from initial stakeholder analysis and understanding the business problem, all the way through to realizing the benefits down the road after the project is delivered or the deliverables are put in place. There's still all that change management stuff going on and measurements of how it succeeded to see if it's earning the benefits that it wanted. So what is this end goal that we're trying to achieve? Why are businesses doing these things? Well, let's look at project governance. And for some reason, this text is not displaying properly on my monitor, which is unfortunate. Looks like there's a font issue. So let me see if I can fix this. So the first element of project governance, how PMI defines it, is project governance is the framework, functions, and processes that guide project management activities in order to create a unique service, product, or result to meet organizational, strategic, and operational goals. This is from PMBOK version 7. So PMI says project governance exists to meet organizational, strategic, and operational goals. It's not about making sure we're on time, on budget, right? It's more sophisticated than that. Prince 2 is a UK government standard for projects, and it says the governance of projects, quote, ensures that an organization's project portfolio is aligned to the organization's objectives, is delivered efficiently, and is sustainable. So we've added elements of sustainability and efficiency in here as well. So it's not just achieving the organization's goals, but doing it in a reasonable way so that they can achieve their business case. And then the third element is the ICB-4, the International Competence Baseline from IPMA, and it says project governance is the established structures, systems, and processes of the organization that provide support for projects and influence the way they're organized, implemented, and managed. So it's expanding it even further to talk about the organization, implement, and management. Yes, it may include sustainability and efficiency, but it could be bigger than that as well. So we have these different versions of what project governance is. Well, let's take a look at that. What are some common project governance practices? Well, in general, that there's an approved business case for each project. We should not do a project that hasn't identified a business need, what it's trying to do, right? Up front, what are the goals? Why are we investing in this project? Because to undertake a project, an organization is taking a risk, right? They're investing resources and time in achieving some kind of objective. That we're using feedback to improve the business case outcomes over time. So we apply lessons learned and try and get better at doing what we're trying to do. We have control committees, right? Steering committees, change control boards that are there to protect these business outcomes, these business benefits. Like they're there to make sure the business gets its value out of this investment. And we use risk management practices to also help protect this value delivery. If you notice, it's all about the business case. It's all about achieving value. Now, how do we measure this? Well, it depends on the industries you're in. Here's an example from professional services firms like law firms, accounting firms, engineering firms. So they might, if they're doing projects for clients, they might use metrics around measuring business benefits, right? Like gross profit. Right? Are they making money on the project? Or they might use elements like measuring customer satisfaction to see what's the likelihood that we're going to get future value creation opportunities, future projects from these clients. It's all about the benefits, right? It's all about ensuring we're getting the benefits are real. So what is business value? Well, Warren Buffett says price is what you pay and value is what you actually get for it. That's interesting. Right? Value is the results, the output. Right? Some people get value and price mixed up. Certainly we need to keep that in mind, right? Price is what you pay, value is what you get for that payment. So business value can go a little bit more in depth here. Business value is derived from the business context, right? The same project in two different contexts might derive completely different values. So we need to understand the business context. It's enabled through performance and strategy. It's a measure of achievement, right? Business value is a way we measure achievement, and we use it as the underlying context for business decision making. Should we approve this change or not? Well, what does it do to the value the project is going to deliver? Increase, decrease? That's a key factor, right? So value helps us make our business decisions. And good project governance should focus on business value so we can get this benefit realization. And what are the benefits of this benefit realization? Well, it helps us make our decisions more consistently and transparently, right? Because everybody's focusing on the exact same things, this business criteria, this business value. Are we doing, right? We can validate how well projects are realizing these benefits by saying, have we tracking the value achievement? Have we achieved or are we achieving the value that we promised when we set out this business case? We can prioritize work on the project in terms of, is it Is it generating enough value to justify it? Or in other words, big bang for the buck, as they often say. Are we optimizing our spend, or are we wasting lots of money on low value generation activities? So there's that efficiency element that we talked about earlier. And as I said, we want to make sure everything's open and transparent. So if everybody, employees and stakeholders, are going to be satisfied if everybody is doing all of their work focusing on and trying to protect value. Now, to realize value, we got to look at both strategy and governance, right? We need both to be able to generate these benefits. Governance is how we control things. It's the, I guess you could say, governance is the compass to keep the value on course. It sets the direction, confirms achievement, redirects the course to ensure the project's on the right path. And strategy is the map used to reach the target state. It outlines the strategic initiatives that enable and enhance and the value realization. Okay, so let's look at this business context in a little bit, in a little bit more detail. I think I just spilt my coffee. So business benefits realization is one part of how we achieve our expected value, right? We understand the context. To achieve the value we're looking for in that context, we need to look at a benefits realization focus, trying to get that value that we needed, but we need risk management, risk optimization here to make sure that we're not taking crazy risks or going off in some weird direction to achieve this value. The risk management side, risk optimization side, ensures that we're not taking on too much risk, that we understand the organization's risk management practices, the tolerance for risk is understood and respected, right? And everybody understands and agrees with the risk. So that's the risk optimization part, because if you get that wrong in achieving the value, you're not going to either be popular within the organization because you violated their comfort zone or their rules, or what you're going to do is find out that you're in a situation where the project might fail to achieve the value they wanted because some unexpected stuff occurred. So we need benefits realization and risk optimization. And the third thing we need is a focus on resource optimization, make sure we got the right people and they're available at the right times and the right equipment, et cetera, to support the project objectives. So there's resource management or capacity management, sometimes it's called, risk optimization, and this benefits realization process, which is really what project management is all about, is bridging across these three. Now, traditionally, projects have a life cycle. You know, you start up the project, you organize and prepare things, then you come up with a plan, then you carry out the plan, carry out the work, do the work of the project. At some point, people sign off or accept the deliverables at the end, and you do some closing out things like lessons learned, et cetera, and then the project is done. Projects tend to follow this curve, right? The starting phase ends in some kind of charter. We develop this charter. The charter has the expectation set in it. We approve the charter, then we move into the planning phase and we build a detailed plan to execute the project. We execute the plan. We may produce some milestones along the way, and then we close out the project. That's the traditional view of projects as espoused by the earlier versions of the PMBOK guide. But the picture's a bit more cloudy than this. Projects actually start sooner. Before we even start developing a charter, we probably are going to have some kind of feasibility study. Somebody's going to come up with an idea for a project and say, hey, wouldn't it be neat if, and they envision a project. Well, somebody's got to say, is that even worth spending time on? They're going to guess at what the benefits might be. They're going to guess at what the costs might be, come up with some estimates maybe, but largely it's not based on a lot of detail yet because we haven't done any detailed planning. They're high level numbers, but somebody's going to put together a business case. And this business case tries to figure out the cost benefit analysis. Is it worth it to do this project? Am I putting $500,000 at risk to generate $500,001 of value? Well, if that's the case, I'm not going to risk $500,000 to generate $1 extra of incremental value. That doesn't make sense, right? That's just inordinately small return on investment. So it's not worth it. There's other things I could do with that $500,000 that'll probably generate more value than that. So that's kind of the point of a business case, is to try and look at the return on investment and decide, is it worth it to do this project or not? And at the end of the project, after we close out the project that builds a new facility or installs our new equipment or writes some new software and gets it launched on the web, there's the benefits realization part of the project where you see, was it really worth it? We thought it was in the business case, right? That's why we did the project, because our feasibility study and business case showed it was worth it to do the project. At the end of the project, you measure actual results and say, were we right? Was it worth it to do this project? And that's the benefits realization phase of the project, where the benefits actually occur. So looking at this a little bit deeper then, what is a business case? Well, we gotta look at the elements of, and again, the font isn't right here, but the APM, a group in the UK, the Association for Project Management, says in their body of knowledge, the 7th edition, quote, a business case provides justification for undertaking a project, program, or portfolio, and it evaluates the benefits, costs, and risks of alternate options and provides a rationale for the preferred solution. Right? So it's some due diligence is involved. Why are we doing this project? What's the justification? And looking at risk and other factors, is this the right approach, or are there better approaches that we should be thinking about? That's what business cases should be doing. Now, a business case, to decide if the project's worth it, needs to figure out, do the benefits outweigh the cost by enough, right, to make it worth it? Well, to do that, it's got to look at both benefits and costs. Now, cost just isn't the budget of the project. There may be other costs like risks and reputation damage, or there might be invisible costs that we need to consider, like, you know, using up favors from people to help get this project done. So we really have to look at a more sophisticated picture to decide, is it worth it? Those costs, if we look at just financial costs, for example, where do those costs come from? Well, you can't figure out the costs until you know what the schedule is, because there's a time value to money. The longer the project takes, the longer you're going to have insurance, the longer you're going to have site security, the longer you're going to have to rent certain equipment and materials. So the idea is that costs are driven by the schedule to a certain extent. How do we come up with a schedule? From estimates. We have to estimate the work required to come up with that schedule. Where do those estimates come from? Well, we're estimating the work to complete the functional requirements. Now, sometimes we call that the scope of the project, right? So we estimate the work required to complete the scope of the project. Where does the scope come from? Well, somebody had to design a solution to a problem, and the scope are the things that we need to build from that solution to help, that are in scope for my project. So say my project was to create a new manufacturing plant to manufacture electric cars in my region. Well, we need to acquire land, we need to build a building, we need to get a bunch of equipment and automation and robotics installed, we need to train workers, we need to acquire HR systems, right, to pay our employees and track their timesheets and manage their benefits. We're going to need an HR department. We're going to need an IT support team for all these, to support all the managers in the HR department in supporting this initiative. So there's a whole organization we got to build and staff and equip to do the job, to run this new business. Now, what's the scope for my project? It's just the construction of the plant, not even the installation of all the equipment. I'm just building the building, for example. So even though all of those things are needed as part of the solution design, a piece of the scope is my scope for my project. From that, I take my functional requirements, estimate the work required to come up with a timeline and budget. So that's how we come up with costs. To come up with the costs for a project, you got to think through all these various elements to come up with some kind of reasonable numbers. So let's take a look at the definition of a business benefit. What is a business benefit? Well, the Business Encyclopedia says a business benefit is a tangible outcome of an action or decision that contributes towards reaching one or more business objectives. And business benefits come from projects striving to achieve those objectives. So there are business objectives. The benefits come through projects. Projects implement changes, right? New products, services, changes to existing products or services. Projects implement change to achieve business benefits, right? In an effort to achieve the outcome. So the objective is why we're doing the project. The benefits are the value that the project creates. So let's look at benefits a little bit deeper. Let's take another level down, go just a little bit deeper. There's two kinds of benefits, right? There's hard benefits, tangible benefits. We call those financial benefits, right? Things that you can measure in dollars. So this project will save us, $130,000 in lost time. Right? This new safety project, we lose time to safety each year, and it costs us so many dollars per hour, for lost time on an employee. Our average year, we're losing that amount of dollars, so that's roughly what our savings are going to be. Those are things that we can measure financially. But there's also non-financial benefits, or sometimes we call these soft benefits or intangible benefits. Intangible benefits are things that we cannot directly measure in dollars. So for example, I'm presenting this webinar from a part of Canada called Ontario. And in Ontario, there is currently a long backlog, a wait list of people awaiting hip replacement surgeries and knee replacement surgeries. There's a long waiting list to get these procedures done. Now, there's a long story of why we're in this state. A lot of it has to do with government underfunding of our healthcare system, but regardless, we are in a situation where there's a long backlog or waiting list for people suffering pain and inconvenience and significant challenges to their mobility simply because they don't have the surgery that they need when they need it. So say our project came up with a new way of finding efficiencies in the system by scheduling those operations more efficiently. And say we could reduce that wait time, maybe from, I don't know, say a year, reduce it from a year down to 2 months, the average wait time for one of these orthopedic replacement surgeries, joint replacement surgeries. If I could reduce it from 12 months down to 2 months, I'd be a hero. Think about the changes it would make to the quality of people's lives. They're not waiting in pain, right, for their surgery. They can get it and get it over with and get back to their regular lives quickly. Great. What are the financial benefits? Well, it's going to be hard to measure those. We might be able to, in fact, we might actually be paying the same amount. I'm still paying the surgeons for those operations. I'm just paying the same amount more quickly. So we might actually end up paying more per year for surgeries because we're doing more surgeries faster. So that may actually be a negative financial benefit to doing this. So should we cancel the project? It's financially a negative return on investment. That sounds odd. Well, look at the non-financial benefits. The improvement to quality of life for so many people might be so significant that it outweighs any difference in financial costs. So sometimes the financial benefits, these soft or intangible benefits, are more important or bigger than the actual financial benefits. And some projects only generate non-financial benefits. Things like community engagement or improved image or reputation may only be non-financial in nature. Now, how do we look at this in depth? Well, let's take a look at benefits, and we can do something like we do with a work breakdown structure in project management, where we deconstruct a deliverable into its underlying elements to identify all the bits and pieces. We can do that with benefits as well. We can do a benefits breakdown, right? So here we have a project. It's a park expansion project, and we can identify two major goals for the project, right? These are the vision, the goals. One is increase services to the local community, and another one is progress the city more towards its greening strategy. That's why we're expanding the park project. Those are the two major objectives. But those objectives each generate a number of benefits, right? So the increased services to the local community as an objective may generate, in this case, 3 benefits. Increased outdoor youth recreation, more outdoor public event areas, and new garden club meeting space. Each of those benefits requires certain deliverables. So the increased outdoor youth recreation needs swings, jungle gym, teeter-totters, a soccer field. The more outdoor public event areas, I'm going to need shelter areas and picnic tables, etc., right? And some objectives, like the one on the right, or some benefits like those on the right, better stormwater management. These are part of the greening strategy. Better stormwater management, more green space for carbon capture, and improved biodiversity may have deliverables that can support multiple benefits, like more grassy areas supports the more green space benefit, as well as the better stormwater management benefit, because grassy areas absorb rainwater, they don't create runoff, for example. So we can use this benefits-driven approach to help identify the scope of a project. Instead of just using a product breakdown where you're identifying all the things you think you need, if products or deliverables aren't directly tied to a business benefit or to the business case, why are you doing them? Right? The scope should be tied to directly driving outcomes, business benefits, and objectives that you're looking for. And using this style of benefits breakdown gets you to the deliverables in the context of understanding why the business needs it. What's the point? Remember, benefits come from deliverables. It's all about the deliverables. Everything is about producing those deliverables. Now, benefits realization usually starts at the end of the project, after the main project begins. If you could imagine, as we start a project, we start investing money. We start spending cash during the main part of the project while we're trying to create the products and services and policies and rules and conditions from which we can start to recognize benefits. So at some point during the project, you've invested the maximum amount, and then some benefits start to get earned towards the end of the project. At some point, the project is over, and now you're in what's called the return period. The return period. After the benefits start accelerating from that point, because all the investment's been done, now it's just benefits after benefits accruing over time. And it's that point of positive return, right, and onwards, where you start to actually see the real positives of doing the project, where you're earning the business benefits, the business value we were looking for. We still need to be measuring stuff. We still need to hang around to see, was the project worth it or not? Did we get the net positive improvement we were looking for? Traditionally, projects end before we can see that happen. So our lessons learned are not quite as useful, because we're not understanding. We could see it, well, we finished on time or budget, but did we make a difference? We don't know yet. That will come later during this benefits period, which happens after the project. So we need to look at a bigger picture of projects to help us get that view. So how do you get ahead of the curve, right, in your own profession to help you focus better on benefits management? Well, here's some critical success factors you can focus on. First of all, make sure you've got stakeholder buy-in for the project. Getting everyone understanding the benefits realization process helps them achieve their goals, and they need to tell you what those goals are up front so you can plan them into the project. Make sure you're working on the right stuff. Make sure you've got the right buy-in from all the stakeholders. They can see a direct line from them achieving the value they were looking for from the project and the project deliverables themselves. Next, assign owners responsible for achieving each of the benefits, right? Often, if nobody's measured for doing something, it could fall between the cracks. It could get forgotten. So assign owners to each of the benefits realization activities, track their progress on those, and hold them accountable. Third, track benefits achievement, the actual earning of those benefits throughout the project life cycle. Monitor these benefits as they occur. What's their state? Are we 50% towards achieving the benefit we looked at? Have we earned the benefit? Is the benefit accelerating and doing better than expected? These are the things that we want to be reporting on in some of our status reports, because that's really what the business stakeholders care about. They don't care so much about on time, on budget if the benefits are being realized. For example, if I had a project that invented a cure for cancer, a single pill that you take once and it erases all cancers in your bodies, would it matter that I'm $50,000 over budget? I mean, we're talking about saving millions of lives every year. What's $50,000? That probably wouldn't matter to the stakeholders because the benefits are so enormous, right? Would it matter that I'm 3 weeks late? If I'm saving millions of lives every year from now into the future, that probably wouldn't. I would be celebrated as a hero, even if my project was late and over budget, if I could cure cancer permanently. So tracking the benefits is more interesting to the stakeholders than tracking some of our traditional project metrics. So make sure we're doing that in our reports. There's a few other things we can do as well, and there's some techniques that we learn from things like the agile methods. Agile project management focuses very much on benefits realization, right? They talk about concepts like minimum viable product and what makes viability, achieving the business outcome you are looking for, right? So here's some techniques from agile. First, plan based on deliverables, not tasks. Business people want to know, when is this deliverable done? Because each deliverable, if you remember, is directly tied to a business benefit. Not all the steps that you needed to get that deliverable done. That's too much detail. You're lost in the weeds. The business could care less about what tasks you're doing. They want to know, when is my deliverable going to be done? Because that's when I can start using it to achieve that benefit. So plan by deliverables, at least when you're communicating to the stakeholders. Create deliverable-based plans to the stakeholders. That's what they really care about. When is my favorite deliverable going to get done? How many deliverables will be done by third quarter, right? That's what they want to know. Next, report on and forecast the business value delivered, the benefits that have actually happened. What's the likelihood for you getting these benefits created on time, and how much benefit have you generated so far? And then optimize all the way through the project. We want to maximize our value delivery, optimize all the way through the project, not just at the end. Don't do lessons learned at the end of the project. It's too darn late. The project's over. If you do lessons learned at the end of the project, you're saying, well, it's too late to help this project, but maybe these lessons learned might help some other future project. Well, if I'm paying for your project as a one-off out of my budget, why would I care about you doing lessons learned to help future projects? That doesn't impact me. That doesn't help me. So sometimes organizations don't focus on lessons learned, don't do a good job on them, because your stakeholders, your sponsor, doesn't see the value from that. You're helping future sponsors, and people sometimes are a bit selfish and don't want to contribute to that. But instead, what Agile does is break the project up into little chunks, little cycles. And at the end of each cycle, each phase, each wave, it does a lessons learned. And when it gathers those lessons learned, it says, not just can this help some future project, but I bet this lesson learned can help this project right now, right? We just did first iteration, and we learned that this stakeholder doesn't know what he's talking about. So next iteration, we maybe will add in some modeling to help visualize things so that person can better understand what it is that they're talking about. Or we might do the first iteration and realize that certain people don't have the skill levels that they thought they had, and they're struggling to build the work at the quality levels we expect. So during the second iteration, maybe we'll reassign that work to somebody with better skills, or we'll put a mentor looking over their shoulder to help train them and mentor them to do a better job, or we'll do more inspections of their work to see if we can spot defects earlier in the process. So the idea is that lessons learned in Agile are done all the way throughout the project because they can impact this project right away, and that helps us speed up optimization. One of the techniques from Lean that Agile borrows from. Another technique we can use from Agile is, and this will be the last one that I show you, is this concept, this focus on business value. Agile actually assigns a dollar value to the deliverables. Every deliverable, we identify how much dollar value of benefits it creates, and we can track the accumulation of business value over time with something called earned business value. As the deliverables get done, and put into use, we can actually track how much value has accrued over time as the amount of value we're creating increases. Now, you can do that during the life of a project as deliverables are created, how much potential value we've created. Or in this case, this example, we wait until the launch date. Well, that, when the project is done, and we can track how much value we're generating, business value we're generating over time as well. Very interesting, because we can actually show whether the project has generated the profits or the savings or the benefits that we were looking for, and prove that to the business, that this was a valuable business investment. So those are the key points I wanted to make, right? So those key tips in focusing on business value. Projects should be, the whole reason we do a project is to achieve some business case outcome, generate some business value that should be enough to justify the costs and the risk that we've taken on to do the project. So if that's the reason we're doing the project, focusing on that value, maximizing that value, reporting on that value might be the most important thing we do as a project manager. I've been a project manager for over 30 years, and I can tell you, my position has always been a value-focused approach, and my stakeholders have appreciated it because they've said no other project managers they've come across have been worrying about protecting their interests so much. In fact, I would argue this value focus is what distinguishes the more mature project managers, the more senior positions, the ones who get paid more, who get the more interesting projects, from the project managers, the more junior project managers, the new project managers, who are so focused on, am I producing the right deliverable according to the schedule? Am I on time, on budget? All that stuff's important, but business value is more important. So I'd say put your focus on the right things. My name's Kevin Aguano. My contact information is on the screen. You'll see my email address, aguano@procept.com, or my phone number. It's in Canada, so the country code is +1 416 540 8570. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have about the material we've covered. Now, I did promise I'd take some questions during this call. So if you have any questions, I don't see any entered yet, you can type them into the chat window or the questions window, and I will address them now. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window or the questions window. Okay, so the first question has come up from Marissa. Marissa says, what's the difference between a business case and a charter? Well, interesting. In some organizations, those terms are used interchangeably. They're so similar. A charter is usually the document that formally launches the project. So signing of the charter or approving of the charter is the event that triggers the bringing into existence of a project. We've approved this project to start. Now, the charter will identify what is the goal of the project, usually some high-level scope statement. What's the goal of the project? Who is the project manager we are authorized with managing this project? Who's the sponsor who's going to be paying for this project? So some key role definitions, and usually a bunch of constraints. Here's how much money we've allocated for this project. Here's key deadlines you have to meet. Maybe there's a certain technology you have to use or partner you need to work with. There may be some constraints put on the project manager. Certain delegated signing authorities. You must comply with our organizational security policies or something like that. There may be some constraints, but signing the charter is the authorization to go do that work. That's your your official signed document that authorizes you to proceed. Keep it in your back pocket as a project manager. That's your, you know, your official mandate, your official authorization. Now, how does that differ from a business case? Well, a business case is the analysis of the pros and cons of the project, looking at the costs, looking at the investment, looking at the risks, and looking at the benefits we're expected to generate and the likelihood that those benefits will occur that justified that approval decision. So the charter and the business case kind of go hand in hand. The business case is the criteria which we evaluated to make the go, no-go decision. The charter is essentially the document we sign to say, yes, we've approved, go ahead. So the charter and the business case are often glued together. They're two parts of the decision. They're two separate pieces of the puzzle. Another name for charter you might be familiar with is a contract. If you're a vendor, your charter is a signed contract with a client, right? The client signed a contract with you to go do some work. That is your charter. The business case for you might be based on the quote that you gave the client, the pricing that you gave them. Is there a profit for you in this? Is it worth it? That your business case was probably based around that quote that you submitted to the client. And their business case to prove to sign the contract with you might be different. They're expected to generate different benefits. It's not profits from paying you. That's your benefit. Their benefits are different. It might be new customers, new revenue streams, more efficiency, less injuries in their manufacturing plant. They have other benefits that they're looking for. So they may have a business case, and you as a vendor may have a different business case for the same project. But the charter, the contract for you as a vendor, is essentially your charter. The client may have a charter also internally that they use to approve the project, because you might be one of several vendors working on different parts of a larger problem. Hope that helped clarify. Okay, there's another question. Francis says, will this presentation video be available? I'd like to share with my team. Absolutely. This will be posted on YouTube, in Procept's YouTube channel, or on procept.com on the homepage, probably in a couple days. We had some font issues with some of the slides, so I'll clean that up in the video, so you'll see the cleaned up version. So within a couple days, it'll be on procept.com or on YouTube in Procept's YouTube channel. Excellent question. We also have another question here from Oluwasei. Risk management is a critical aspect of project management. Could you discuss a complex project where unforeseen risks threatened the success of the project? How did your team identify, assess, and mitigate these risks in real time? And what lessons can we learn from that experience? Okay, let me give you an example from my past experience, and I'm just quickly thinking off the top of my head. Okay, so I was doing a video game development project. At the time, I was working for a large systems integrator, and our client was a bank, and we were creating a video game to teach children about money and banking and investments. It was kind of a fun project. So we were creating this video game, and we had a technology design decision to create the code a certain way that would create this really nice looking 3D animation live on the fly. But a risk was that we'd never done this technique before, and there was a risk that the older computers would not be able to use this technique, or would not be able to be fast enough to process all the calculations needed to do this 3D rendering live. It wouldn't come out fast enough to be acceptable, right? The performance would be too slow. So we made some design changes. The animation wouldn't be as smooth. We reduced the number of frames per second. That would reduce the processing needed. That was one risk strategy. right, to reduce the likelihood of that happening. But that wasn't enough for me. So for me, my risk analysis determined that I think this is a significant risk. And sure, reducing number of frames per second that we would have to render would make a difference, but I wanted something more out of the box to help protect me from this risk. So what we did was we actually had a second programming team kick up and use a completely different animation strategy that instead of 3D would be this 2D animation approach that had some elements that kind of simulated 3D, but it was still technically 2D animation. The result wasn't as rich, but it would be way faster. And we had them in the background developing their approach in parallel. And the second team didn't know that the first team was going on, and vice versa. There's sort of a secret second team doing their work. So at the end, when the animation pieces were done, we could do a side-by-side comparison of the two on multiple platforms. So we could see, even on the older equipment, which one had acceptable performance, or did they both? And we ended up going with the Plan B approach, the 2D animation approach, because it just gave us a huge, broader range of equipment that could play the game. Right? The bank wanted all their customers to be able to use it, not just the ones on new computers. So that was another technique that we used to mitigate risks in sort of real time. I hope that was helpful. I hope that example clarified an example. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Please just type them into the questions or the chat window. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Ivan just said, I loved the benefits I'm getting out of this presentation. Good job. Thank you, Ivan. That's great. Okay, looks like we're out of time. Oh, one more real quick. Somebody asked, is the phone number displayed your WhatsApp contact? Yes, absolutely. Feel free to reach out to me at that number. You can reach me on WhatsApp. That's also a landline if you want to, or a cell phone if you want to call me directly through the telephone network, that works, or you can reach me on WhatsApp. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Wherever you heard about this webinar, we run new webinars roughly every 2 weeks throughout the year. They're free. I encourage you to keep looking. You'll find some more and enjoy. And all of our webinars are recorded and posted to our YouTube channel under Procept Associates, Procept, Procept on YouTube. You'll find us. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye for now.